Okay, so good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar series of In Conversation With. Today I will be chatting with three retail experts, but before we jump in, I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. I have some new faces in the participant list today. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Ridwana. I usually go by Ray. I'm a footwear designer, concept creator, and I also am a sustainability consultant. And so today I'm going to just move into a little bit of housekeeping, and I'd like you to all keep yourselves on mute. Sorry, Shinky, I muted you by accident. But for everyone who is not is not a panelist, please keep yourself on mute. If there are any questions that you have, I'd like you to just pop it into the chat and I will read it out to my guests. And yeah, so today we're discussing what the future of retail is going to look like, particularly from an Afrocentric point of view. You know, for a while now, we've been noticing that there's this slow, painful death of brick and mortar in retail. And we also have consumers asking brands more and more pertinent questions. Who made what I'm wearing? Where is it coming from? You know, is my supply chain completely transparent? What is going on in the background of this particular t-shirt that I bought? What's the story behind it? And, you know, the sustainability story is starting to take center focus within the retail space. And I'm hoping to deep dive into this with my guests today. And I'm going to introduce them one by one. I'll start with Shingai. Shingai happens to be a co-founder in a consultancy that, well, she and I co-founded it together. It's called Creatively Connected. And what we do in this particular consultancy is build brands from conceptualization of an idea all the way through to managing the production. And Shingai also happens to be a really, really amazing retail expert in terms of, you know, marketing, getting the product mix right and all that. I'm going to let her talk to you about that a little bit more. The second guest that I have is Alex Harris. Alex has a long and colorful history in retail on this continent. And I think that just scratching a little bit around his brain will just reveal so many things that we could potentially use going forward in your retail journey as new brands. And the third person that I'm chatting to is Kasamba. And Kasamba is also a retail expert. You have a brand strategy company now, am I right? Yes, and the brand strategy company that she has is doing incredible things. So I don't want to take any sort of limelight away from my guests. I'm going to start with Kasamba first. Can you please introduce yourself to my guests and what is it that you're doing exactly?
Hi everyone, thanks for your time this morning. I think in this kind of period of time, we all think we have a lot of time, but actually we're finding our time is quite precious, so thank you for that. So I started out my career actually on the shop floor, which I think at the time was super painful, but I have never regretted it since. I then moved into buying, and I'm now doing a lot of work around branding, brand consulting, strategy, design, all of that sort of thing. So what I've found really is that retail is in everything, and I really think that people with kind of retail mindsets are really well equipped to talk about brands in general, to understand what customers want, to be able to design whatever product they're putting out there. I think retail, in terms of being able to do that real slog that we all know that retail is, really puts you in a good position for the rest of your career or the rest of whatever you're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, that's great. Alex, would you like to tell everyone what is it that Alex Harris Consulting does and a bit about you? You're on mute, Alex. Would you unmute? Oh, there we go. I'm just asking you to unmute yourself. There you go.
So I've come out of corporate retailing up till 3 years ago. And I worked with AFI, and that's where I worked with Shingai again. And that's where I met yourself. So the last 3 years, I've been spending a lot of time connecting small retailers and small CMTs together, and to try and make a difference of how we can add that point of difference in terms of design creativity and make well-made garments in order to drive and local. Because I did find that when I was working with corporates, it all became about price. So that is what I do at the moment, but obviously through lockdown, I've done a lot of other things, and that's helped me get a bit of a change of headspace, and my whole theme about adaptability has really been hit quite hard over the last couple of weeks. So that's what I do.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. And lastly, Shengai, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about you and what is it that you're currently doing?
Hi, so I'm Shengai, and I'm a co-founder of Creatively Connected, which is our design consultancy, where Dwana focuses more on the sustainability and shoemaking aspects of the design, and I concentrate more on the digital and the apparel design part of the business. So we actually take small brands, people who want to start brands, people who have existing brands, and help them create products, improve their products, streamline their manufacturing. And then on my end, I also help them set up their digital platforms, help them figure out how to run them effectively, and help them understand the e-commerce world. So my background is I started my own online store in 2009. So long before shopping online was a big thing. I had a big shock because I was following international trends, and Net-a-Porter had been online since 2000, and it seemed to be where the world was going. But South Africa was still lagging very behind. We're starting to see maybe in the last 3 years where people are understanding the importance of having an online platform, and more so now in a time of Corona. I've been incredibly busy setting up stores for smaller brands who no longer have markets to go to, whose suppliers' stores were closed for the entire of level 5 and part of level 4. They still need to interact with their customers and sell their product. And even in our design aspect of our company, we've seen a shift in what people are designing. It's more centric to leisure wear and being comfortable at home and being able to work from home, rather than like the party dresses, the vacationing outfits. So there's been huge adjustments that our clients have seen, and they've taken on the digital platform almost in a panic because they realized they had no outlets. The people that they supply no longer existed or were shut down or didn't have clients going into their spaces, but they still wanted their product and they didn't have a means to do it. So it's been a really important and busy time. It's really fast forwarded the digital arena in South Africa, which needed to happen. We're lagging way behind the rest of the world, and I feel like we've taken 5 years steps in the space of 3 months. It's amazing.
Yeah. So in fact, that is actually quite true. There's a really amazing thinker called Yuval Noah Harari, and he is, I think he's Israeli, and he's one of the greatest thinkers of our century, I think. And he said that I guess like the challenge, but also the benefit of having something like coronavirus happen is that we just fast forward history a little bit. And, we get pushed into a situation where it's adapt or it's die. And what everyone now is doing is just figuring out ways to adapt. And, I think that it's an interesting way of looking at it. And to your point of us being lagging behind in digital, that seems to be on the road to finding its feet now, within the space that we're talking about. So I want to maybe just dip into the whole digital aspect of retail right now, since this is what is happening, that there's been an obvious ginormous migration to online, and that's just because no one else had a choice about it. And how do you think, Alex, that this has affected all the big names in retail?
Everybody out there is busy designing their own websites. So website prices have become very cost effective. I even drew up my own website on a 5-day free course. So don't go onto it because you won't find anything, but I just had to do it to try and learn and understand what it was about. But I think the message that I'm finding working with the small and medium retailers at the moment is that before COVID, everybody was trying to get onto this bandwagon that what Shanghai was saying, where now, because there's so much availability of websites and so many online platforms, collaboration and cooperation is probably a better way to go. So I'm advising the people I work with, don't start your own website, but rather use your social media platform that you own to drive them towards other websites. So I'm talking about, I sold some safety socks yesterday on one day only, and it's the money I asked for is the price I got. So I got the money paid today. I said the invoice, and I'm going to drop the socks off this afternoon. So I think that is what's changed, is that it's not just your website, your online platform that you try to do it your own. SMEs are working far closer together. They're all helping a lot more than the bigger retailers are. And I know that because I come from big retail. So I think that is where the future lies, is how we collaborate and use the amount of platforms out there and coming together to actually make this digital online sales more effective.
Okay, that's great. So Kasamba, I'd like to find out from you, how do you think messaging around retail now needs to change? Like what's going to have to go a little bit, I don't know, west with the messaging that we currently have?
So if I just take South Africa in particular, I think I want to pick up on what Alex was saying in terms of really what we're finding is that smaller brands are so much closer to the customer, and the way that their messaging comes across is almost intuitive. So I'm reading something, I'm online, I'm on my phone, and I see something from a smaller brand. Like I just saw one the other day. I'm actually putting in a request to get one. It looks like a shirt here, but it's a tracksuit from here down. So to you guys, I'm wearing a shirt, but it's really nicely designed. It's a white shirt, collar front, and then it's like a gray melange. Everyone who knows me knows I have gray melange, full-on tracksuit. So, and you know, the way that that came across and the way they worded, they're like, girl, we know the Zoom story. It just kind of resonated with where I was at the time. And I've always felt that in South Africa, because our kind of retail cartel for fashion in particular is really big, really old, really strong, really, really not agile, really not listening to the customer. So if I look at some of the big guys out there, I'm like, you know, I think Woolworths should be very happy with themselves if they sell food, because other than that, I'm looking at everybody and saying to myself, and no shade to big retailers, don't come at me. We're just talking real stuff. I just feel like the messaging is kind of lost. It's like, if you looked at what was there, there's no coronavirus, there's no home story, there's no adaptability. There's like, you guys are not going through anything, just buy the clothes. And we're all kind of like, our lives have really shifted. And what we're looking for when we buy something is now when we look at messaging, to your question, Ridwana, really now what we're looking for is we're looking for people who understand where we're at and who we feel we can drop a comment on their page. They will talk to us if there's something wrong with the order. It's a very short communication line. So the messaging that fashion brands have to get out there is, I understand you, I understand your situation as my customer. I feel it I really empathize with where you're at. And so this is what I've got to give you. Not like, hey guys, I've got clothes, better come and buy. Because that sort of messaging doesn't work. As well as messaging that says, guys, if you want to be more fabulous, buy my clothes. If you want to feel beautiful, buy my clothes. All of that sort of guilt messaging, dead. We're not interested. We're all at home. We've all got bushy eyebrows. We're not really trying to do that stuff right now. And I don't know that we'll pick that up once Corona is over. I think there's a certain amount of self-acceptance of the situation that customers find themselves in, that they legitimize their situation. They're like, perhaps my mental health is not the best. So what I'm looking for is some really kind of like warm, cuddly things to make me feel better. And you know what? I have a right to feel that way. And I have a right to access fashion and brands that understand that about me. I don't have to fit into you, you have to fit into me.
Fabulous. That is some really, really good insight. So I'd like to find out from all three of you now, and I'll start with Shanghai first, is current challenges in the retail space. Let's just do them like sort of bullet points. What are the current immediate challenges that need rectifying?
Well, the obvious thing is that South Africa has been lagging behind on the online space. So we're having to play a huge catch-up game in a very short amount of time. And the catch-up game also now means that you have to educate your consumer to feel comfortable shopping online, you know, to so that they actually do buy and feel comfortable. Because the way online spaces have been used the last 5-10 years is your online shop was sort of a catalog, so someone could make their choice before they went into your physical space to go and buy. So that it's still, if you have bricks and mortar, I'm sure in the future it's still going to be very important, but having a really strong online presence now is what's going to keep your business running. And till the end of the year, if we're honest, there is no vaccine yet for Corona, and our numbers are jumping up and people are getting a lot more skittish about going outside, but they still need things. I've got a children's wear brand, and like, I cannot tell you the last time I saw a child in public. You know, everybody's looking scared with their masks, and it's just more comfortable to shop online. So one of the other challenges is the retailers adapting to that, especially the smaller businesses. When they look at the online platforms, they feel very overwhelmed because some of them have been operating without an online shop. In fact, the majority have been operating without online shops. They've got social media. They've been taking orders on WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram, but they don't have a dedicated space to actually sell their wares and have it photographed properly. Like, they haven't had that learning curve at a time where things were calmer and easier. So that's definitely a challenge. It means people had to, you know, March 15 to March 28th was a huge panic time for brands. You know, what am I going to do? My shop is going to be closed. How am I going to communicate with my customers? How am I going to get my goods to my customers? They've had to answer questions other brands who've been operating online answered 5 years ago, and they had to do that in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. You know, their livelihood depended on it. So that's like one of the major challenges that I've seen is a big influx in people calling me and saying, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to build this platform. I don't know how to market it. Because it's more than just setting up a pretty page, putting your products, some decent pictures of your product and hoping for sales. You know, there's a whole marketing cycle behind it. You have to understand payment systems and courier systems and understand what your limitations are. And there's a huge learning curve. You know, it probably took me from 2009 to probably 2013 or 14 before I was fully comfortable with my space. And even then, the online space constantly changes. As soon as you learn one thing, there's a new innovation, there's a new option. You have to understand your pricing and how to communicate to your customer to entice them to shop online, and how to present yourself on so people feel comfortable shopping from you, especially as a South African consumer. So yeah, that's my takeaway. So this has been great to propel, because we were lagging behind the rest of the world. One positive of Corona has been we've had to catch up, and and the learning curves are big. You can see in a lot of brands that the learning curves are big, but they're doing it finally, which is really encouraging. Yeah.
Alex, what do you have to add to that?
I think Shingai's strength, which I worked with her, she went from a designer, became a retailer, and extended that from brick and mortar onto online space. And I think that's what I'm finding working with a lot of designers at the moment. They've had such bad experiences with some online platforms that they've lost trust in when they are approached with somebody to go online. So I think that is the one thing. And a lot of them are looking for mentorship. I mean, right now, the biggest problem with a small SME is their overhead. You know, if you're struggling to survive, and when you're struggling to survive personally, not just from a business point of view, you cannot make those decisions that were so easy to have been made before this. So when I go up and say, yeah, scale up and do this. So I think it's important is that we need to play as a role of a mentor first and foremost. I think that's what Kasamba was saying, is that is what the smaller retailers and have got the advantage over the bigger guys. And I think that's reality, because we know that is an advantage. The other thing is that how do we offer our customers something new and something different, but not too expensive? The days of buying something just because it's local is not enough. We've actually we've got to design something that is slightly different than all the mass retailers are offering, but at a good price. So maybe there's the collaboration between us and the bigger retailer or the bigger manufacturer. Because if we try to do it all on our own and all remain small, we're just going to be too expensive. So, and then the choice to then prepare for scaling up one day. Don't try to scale up now. But my biggest problem right now is the cash flow that my SMEs are suffering right now. They would want to do things, but but they've got to make certain decisions. So don't be too protective over your brand. Customers do understand that we're all struggling. I think that's why I like what Kasamba was saying. Tell them, yes, we're struggling. I'm a designer, I've struggled, I'm battling to pay my rents, and I'm doing this to help you and me. And I think if you're sincere about it, it's easier sitting there than sitting in a big corporate environment, sending out a 3 posts a day, telling them about how you're saving the world. I think that's where the sincerity is our biggest differentiator right now.
And people want to connect with the smaller.
Kasamba, would you like to add to the challenges that we've got going on?
I think, so the challenges are, where do you want to start? There's a lot. South African retail has always had certain challenges, and we don't want to start pulling historical things from the collapse of the local manufacturing sector, which I really think we're starting to feel now. It's kind of like if we had a crystal ball back then, we'd be like, no, save the industry just for Corona, because then we would have been in a much better place. But I think some of the challenges that we have is the way that we've done fashion retail in South Africa up until now is going to flop. So we're not going to be able to do things the way we used to do them. And what I mean by that is all we had to do before was go, what's happening in London? What's happening in Milan? Let's just take this. Oh, I think a skinny jean is happening here, knock it off. So that stuff is really, it started to be eroded when all the foreign retailers came into the country. And I think that Zara and H&M, they also learned some really hard lessons about what it means to retail in an environment like this.
Yeah.
But what we're going to have to start doing is the biggest challenge for us, I think, as an industry, from like raw materials to retailers and everything, designers, etc., is to really be able to trust yourself. So you live here, you know your neighbor, you know your community, you know what people are wearing. Don't put your decision-making ability in the hands of River Island and you're going to go shop it on Oxford Street and then come back 3 months later and try and replicate that. The South African consumer, and I think the emerging market consumer, if we talk about Africa as a whole, is starting to really get nauseated by that. To say, like, why do I have to, I remember when I was still teaching, and a lot of my students would be like, well, the stuff in Topshop was still here at the time. The stuff in Topshop in London is way cooler than the stuff we get. And there was an irritation about that, to be like, I also have money, and I want to pay for something that I really like, but you guys are not giving me the stuff that I want. And then, of course, we talk about, well, the market is different and all of that. So we understand all of those dynamics. But I think for retailers and designers now, it's like there's no better opportunity. Take this opportunity now to really reject how you've grown up in retail and do what you always thought you were going to do, but you're going to get shut down in the boardroom. So do your market research that way. Produce your clothes that way, whether you want to take this or that. This is the time for new systems, and this is the time for new supply chains. Think about your design process a little bit differently. Don't look elsewhere to kind of get your inspiration. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying be completely Afrocentric. I'm saying just be true to your brand and be true to the customer. People will tell you what they want if you just ask them.
Okay, that's really interesting. Good viewpoints, guys. So Alex, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts around nearshoring going forward? Are we going to be seeing more of it?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
I said, what are your thoughts about nearshoring going forward? Like, especially given the fact that supply chains have been too long in the future, like how is nearshoring going to work for us?
I've never heard the term, but I do understand what you're saying now. It's interesting. we are finding when things are tough, we start looking at what we do best. So what South Africa is starting to do very well now, big retailers do very well. They've developed a fast fashion model and quick response. So suddenly buying some product offshore from Bangladesh or India or China with longer lead times, it's not as attractive as the fast fashion model. So I've just been approached recently, like last week, from a big importer of product that sells into big retail to say, can I introduce him to my CMT that I work for? And we could become the quick response arm of his import model. Mm-hmm. And now, because I know what's happening at big retail, that's what they're trying to, because obviously you're minimizing risk by doing alterations or versions of what's sold. I think that is where, I don't think it's going to be at exclusion of one over the other. I think there's going to be demand for offshore where it comes to items that you don't need confirmation on immediately, for example, more core items or items that do require good value or makeup from a production point of view that offshore does do quite well. But I think the local, you've got to be producing well-made products and creative products that is different, as what Kasamba's saying, not get excited when you hear about a River Island silhouette and I want to repeat it. Do your version. But it really comes down to doing it fast as well. Local customers are going to expect, they're not going to expect it in a week or two, but they're not going to expect something for you to eventually give them something in 2-3 months' time. So we could take on that fast fashion model as a smaller retailer or smaller designer, and then obviously give them better looking garments or different looking garments. I think that could be the real niche. So I would say in summary, it's a combination of what you can produce here first as a priority because of speed and because of the own design. And then if you need to go on longer runs or you need some point of difference from a makeup capability, then you will still go offshore.
Let's speak to fast fashion actually. So fast fashion and sustainability don't actually sit in the same room, right? So with regards to nearshoring it's exactly what you're just saying. I guess I'm just using a different term because that's what I was taught. So nearshoring is literally just sourcing as local as possible, like trying not to reach your arm out over to China, trying not to reach your arm out over to, other parts of East Asia, that sort of thing. So if we talk about fast fashion going forward, then we would have to essentially say, how can we do fast fashion in a sustainable way? Does nearshoring your fast fashion actually allow you to do fast fashion in a sustainable way? And I mean, that's a question that's neither here nor there, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Shingai?
I think Kasamba wants to say something. I'm going to go with Kasamba first, and then Shingai, and Alex, I'm coming to you last.
Sorry, guys, I'm jumping the gun. Guys, I think that we have to accept in some way, shape, or form the fast fashion curve is here.
Yeah.
Right? So we're looking that idea, because the idea of fast fashion, and Alex, I understand what you're saying in terms of being able to get a read from a customer and have that stock in store in a very short space of time. Super valuable. No one is knocking that. The part of fast fashion that we're not loving is that for it to have made money and have made sense, the turnover of stock was so often, and the volumes were really big, and the prices were really low. So I'm saying from a fast fashion, what we can learn from fast fashion going forward is have your fingers and your eyes and your ears in the market, understand what people want at that moment, but they're not going to want something different in 2 weeks. So what is the kind of thing that you can read and you can hit it really well, and you can produce it as locally as possible, and you can do it for the right price, not necessarily the lowest price. And people can understand the value equation of what you're doing, because I think that enamoration is not a word. We were so in love with fast fashion because we were like, We were starved for fashion in South Africa. We were like, oh, thank you for actually giving me a high-waisted skinny jean with 2 splits on the knee, just the way I wanted. Thank you, everybody. And we were really excited about that. And we were also excited about buying a pair of jeans from Zara for $5.99. Ooh. But now it's like, okay, yeah, and then what? So I think that fast fashion, because just the levels of waste from the cupboards that we have, don't even go further than the customer. If the customer is cleaning out their cupboards and they're looking at the clothes that they've got to give away, it's actually like it starts to get a little bit like, oh, this is not so cool. And a friend of mine was having, just for a personal anecdote, she was saying, you know what is really sad? I haven't bought anything in the last 10 years that my daughter is going to be able to wear when she, that's sentimental. But basically the clothes are, the quality is not that great. So the clothes don't last that long. So you basically, things are obsolete, you know, fashion-wise as well as quality-wise. And then there's nothing left except rubbish, really. And I think that I'm over it personally.
Yeah, the thing with
you know, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation says, sorry, Shingai, just a second before you jump in. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has thrown out a stat that says that we are buying, I think it's 70% more than we used to, and we're wearing it for 30%, like we're only wearing it for 30% of its actual lifespan. So, and we're sending a minute's worth of waste to truck's worth of waste to the landfill every single minute. So that's huge. That's massive amounts, you know. Sorry, Shingai, you can go on.
No, I was actually going to make a point on why it is important for us to figure out what's going on within our own communities and try and support them for that exact reason. Is waste is a huge problem. If I look at what I was buying from the same local retailers 10 years ago and what I bought last year, some of the stuff from 10 years ago is in better condition than the things that I bought that I didn't think were fast fashion when I bought them until I'd gotten a little bit of wear in them. And then I start noticing, ooh, this fabric's starting to stretch out and the stitching is starting to break because it was made for a quicker audience. And I'm finding that during this time, even with my own brand, I've got customers coming back and saying, oh, I'm pulling out things I bought from you 4 years ago, and it's still wearable. The little one behind them is wearing it now. And now there's a lot more thought going into how people are purchasing, and this time at home has just shown how much we don't actually need. And a lot of people have been supporting local, not just because the bigger brands aren't speaking to them, as Kasamba was saying. They're still doing the same promos. Like if we screenshot an ad from last year this time for some of the bigger retailers and the ones who've got a great online presence, and screenshot an ad now, you wouldn't even know anything is going on in the world. But when you actually start looking at the smaller brands who are speaking to the consumer directly, that I'm a small business, I get what you're going through, I'm trying to create product that suits what you're going through, you know, let's talk about it. You see their interaction on social media is very different. You know, they're speaking directly to the consumers. And with people being at home and being alone, I mean, I'm quarantining alone. You know, it's nice to feel that your community actually understands what you're going through. Your customers understand what you're going through. I do children's wear. I don't think I've seen a child in 3 months, you know. So, and I have to speak to that when I'm creating product for that customer, and adapt my product offering for that, and make things that make sense for the time instead of just concentrating on this huge volumes and huge waste and wear it now, you know, throw it out next week, there's something new. People are like sort of going through their cupboards and seeing what they need, you know, because incomes aren't really guaranteed at the moment for employed people. There's a lot of retrenchments and people are scared to spend their money. So the retailers that are actually speaking to that and saying, we get what you're going through, we're going through it too. We want to make sure that we're providing you with product and services that suit what's going on. We're not ignoring it, it's happening. We're also trying to figure it out. Those are the people who are probably getting more customer loyalty. And now the local industry is actually looking at their local brands in a different way, because the smaller local brands are speaking to them directly and saying, we know what you're going through, we're going through it too, and we want to serve you during this time. And that's the way to do it.
Alex?
I wish I had more stretch clothing over the lockdown. I agree. I think the people that I'm working with, I'm working with 9 SMEs through Cape Town Passion Council. We're looking at building, range positioning. Our first priority is survival. Our next priority is to support local, which we are, and to support other locals. We're trying to create employment through our collaborations with factories, etc. So the sustainability right now is, it's a broader sustainability. It's about letting people survive in this time. And I think that is going to ultimately, customers are going to remember that. Our partners will remember that. Whether a restaurant stays closed now or they stay open, I'm going to remember who stays open and who stays closed, because any restaurant stays open right now is all they're doing is to supply employment to staff. They're not opening because they're making money. It's the same thing with CMTs, with retailers. So to me, we've got to drive that local, but let's use this to drive it smarter. Let's not just to drive it because it's local. Let's drive it because it's different, what we're all saying, and make sure that it's not the same price, but it's not 4 or 5 price points more. So don't be we could be 1 or 2 price points more because we do smaller runs, our fabric costs more expensive, but we can be different, but we can give them, but change the nature of what we offer the customer. Give them something that, what Shingai was saying, give them something that's versatile, that can be used for different end uses, that, you know, and what's appropriate for them right now, rather than giving them something and going, but I don't understand why they're buying it. So don't look stupid, don't be stupid. The customers aren't stupid. The customer is telling us what they want. We've just got to stay closer to them because money is tighter. So therefore, when we earn their trust, they will buy from you because they're part of your journey and you're part of their journey.
You know, I had a friend this morning reach out to me. We have some interesting conversations around brand sustainability, etc. And this friend is from New Zealand, and he was saying that a multi-brand online store had asked the brand that he works for, what is their sustainability story? And if they are not able to provide a convincing enough sustainability story, what does that actually mean? So, you know, in terms of the online space that we currently have here, you know, the big online multi-brand stores that we have here, you know, what are your thoughts around their sustainability stories currently? Anyone can go.
The sustainability stories of the big retailers.
Yeah, so like we have like multi-brand stores, like for example, let's say Superbalist. Superbalist is massive right now, and they have multi-brands. Like, what kind of sustainability story would a retailer, a multi-brand retailer like Superbalist be able to tell? Like, how much control do you think they actually have in telling a convincing sustainability story?
Well, it depends on their manufacturing practices and where they're getting their product from. That's where it needs to start. I mean, if you go onto a multi-brand, there are actually a lot of multi-brand online stores that are specifically providing and sourcing and are based in South Africa and sourcing and providing African product. And that is a story within itself because it keeps those businesses open, it keeps people employed, and that's a sustainability story on its own. I've seen a huge shift with my customer base who are very quick to put foreign brands above their local brands. And then during this time of Corona, now they're realizing that the local brands are actually speaking directly to them because we know what's going on within our immediate vicinity of our country, and we can speak to that and cater to it. And maybe not so much the bigger retailers. And even more so, the smaller brands have been quicker to shift their product offering, how they're getting their product to the customers, and empathizing with their customer and what's going on right now. And when you're in lockdown and, you know, living at home, alone or with 5 children screaming at you. I've seen a huge shift in what's going on online with these brands and how they're speaking to their customers. And it's become quite obvious the divide of local brands and brands that supply local product and international brands that have sort of adopted South Africa as a sales portal. And not, you can tell which brands are looking at their customers as people and which brands are looking at their customers as a vehicle to make money. And that's a huge thing. And because of that, a lot of my digital clients are saying, geez, as bad and awful as this Corona has been, it's been a great equalizer online, because, the biggest retailer online and the smallest retailer online can have a very similar platform. And now it's about the product you're selling, how you're communicating to that customer, and what your values are. People have time to sit and read your about page, to sit and look where your things are being made. I stay in Joburg. It's busy here. You get what's convenient. And now all of a sudden there's this environment of patience and research, and people are online. If you just look on Instagram, the number, before you'd go and you see Instagram live and you'd see some people are chatting, there are certain hours of the day that at any given time, you'll see there'll be live chats, multiple going on. And I've always noticed that it's the smaller brands who are communicating directly with their consumers. You're not often to see, for example, a Woolworths doing a live chat on Instagram, talking directly with their customers, or a Zara. It's the smaller clothing brand who's like, hi guys, how are you doing? How are you coping? And it's fostering a different relationship with the customer. And it's really nice to see, because it's been an equalizer for the smaller brands. It really has, because online, we're all the same, really. We may not have the biggest offering, but maybe people don't want to scroll through 15 pages of product. Maybe they want to go to an online store that says, I get your needs right now. And if you have 5 products, but if they're the 5 products I need, I'm going to support you. And that's been really important. So as horrible as this time has been, it's been such an eye-opening experience for retailers and an equalizer for the smaller ones to have a chance to actually break through in an industry where people love to go out, and shopping was a big experience in the bigger malls where smaller brands couldn't afford to be. And then they were sort of disappearing. So that's been amazing that the local market is getting a fighting chance. And that's going to speak volume for our sustainability story as a country, that we finally have a chance to compete as smaller brands with the bigger brands. And quite frankly, I think the smaller brands are doing a really good job of it right now. They're adapting very quickly, which you had to with Corona, and speaking to the customer in a way that makes much more sense.
Yeah, interesting. Kasamba, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think with sustainability, so for me, this is kind of getting into the thorny side of retail, that like, if I have like 6 glasses of wine, you're going to hear me complaining about it, which is, it's always like, so what goes hand in hand, I think, in the South African market and in a lot of emerging markets, and we're starting to see it also in the more established markets, what goes hand in hand with sustainability is diversity. So we can't sit and say we're putting sustainability goals above people goals and diversity goals. And what I mean by that is not that a brand has to champion 2 things at the same time. What I mean by that is we have had unsustainable supply chains up until now because we're chasing profit. And we know that that's how it is. So we're saying, how big of an IMU can I make on this? If I buy these socks from China, I can make 70% margin. If I buy them locally, never mind that I've got a more agile supply chain, whatever, then I'm looking a little bit like less. So that's where my decision has been made. So when we look at that, what we're also saying is, because I remember when I was working for a particular retailer, I shall not mention names, but the idea that we would source product that is de facto the same as another brand within the larger business, which was really looking at a much lower price point. To be like, we can sell it a little bit more expensive because of our brand name, but the product is essentially the same because we'll bank the margin. to me, I'm saying that that is a fundamental disrespect of the consumer. So if we're looking at a business, and by and large, I think a lot of big business in South Africa, not just fashion retail, has been rather dismissive of the customer in their personal capacity. To say, well, you're poor, so have this. If you look, I mean, my biggest bugbear in retail is actually not fashion, it's furniture. If you look at lower end furniture, the amount of trash that people are sold on higher purchase to be like, you're poor, so have this thing and be happy with it. We go and we just compare, and I'm sorry if anyone is listening from these businesses, but maybe maybe there's wine in my coffee. But if we look at the colors that are available for people to decorate their homes in lower price point retailers, I'm looking at Sheet Street, and then we're looking at the color palette that is available for people who shop at the W collection. As buyers, we're all looking at the same fashion reports. We're all looking at the same fabric swatches. We all go to the same Pantone webinar stuff. We know the same things. But we say, because my customer is poorer, they will like the super bright orange because that's what they like. So when we talk about that, then bringing that into sustainability, it's like saying, well, you know what? People with money care about sustainability. So we're only going to do organic cotton at this price point. And we're only going to talk about sustainability at this price point. So if I'm a big mass retailer, and we've had these conversations, and I'm sure all of us have been in the room where they're like, the customer doesn't care about sustainability, guys. They're just trying to have enough money to make ends meet. And I think now, in terms of what Shingai is saying, we're starting to see that that is not the case. Our customer is not just a one-faceted being. You can't say because someone doesn't have money, they don't care about the environment. They don't care about having clothes that are valuable. They don't care about this and that. You can't say that. So what we really have to do as businesses is to understand our customers as whole people and whole communities. Because if you go in and you say, I'm sourcing this from a natural place, like let's talk about body products, it's good for your skin and it's a good price point. And this one is like, I'm just a big retailer and it's a good price point. I think a customer will be like, you know what, I've got a choice now. I think I'll choose that. Sustainability really comes part and parcel of what is important to people. How do we communicate it? And it's not just a sugarcoat on top. Well, other people are doing it, so I'm also going to follow the trend and I'm going to be super sustainable. That's not really how we have to look at it. And smaller brands are able, like if we're talking about leapfrogging, so South Africa, like you said, Shingai, leapfrogged a lot of, starting to leapfrog some online technology. Smaller brands are able to leapfrog supply chains to start off sustainable and to stay that way. And so that's when we're starting to see that value, and people are starting to choose that and say, you know what, I buy this story and I buy why you're in business. And you're not just trying to sell me something, you're trying to survive. Like you're saying, Alex, you're trying to pay people, you're trying to create jobs. If I'm going to buy a jersey, I'll buy it from you. Thank you very much. So I think that those two things in terms of being able to look at diversity and understand who is in the market and respecting everybody as a human being, and then also being able to look at sustainability at the same time and say, I'm going to give you something that's valuable to you. That for me is where the conversation gets interesting.
Brilliant, brilliant. If anyone has any questions for my guests, could you please pop it into the chat and I'll make sure to ask it. So Alex, if I'm not mistaken, you have worked around the continent, am I right?
No, I've sourced around the continents. I've done a lot of work with Mauritius. Mauritius have got a very good initiative they launched yesterday. So there's the thinking is starting to be right there, where the government is starting to, unfortunately our government, we've run out of money. So any potential chances of clusters with DTI and IDC have everything been put on hold. But before COVID, there's a very big drive from DTI and IDC to try bring smaller entities to work with bigger entities. I think we must continue with it, but just on the sustainable, I think what Shingai has said now, ethical sourcing is not an option to be unethical. So whether you're small or whether you're big, and when you're chasing price, because I agree with Kasamba, we big retailers, anybody chases price. But if you do it unethically, you're going to be land-based, and we should all stand up against it because that is just not right. So that to me is my points of departure. I don't work with any unethical suppliers, whether they're sitting in India, Mauritius, or the rest of Africa. We do need bigger retail. We do need, a lot of our customers are saying, I did a whole corporate uniform the other day for a wine farm when they were still open, and they wanted hemp fabric for the uniforms. It cost double the price. So yes, they wanted it, but so when I showed them the price, they went, oh, sure, but I can't. So we do need big retail, because what retail can do, if the more they introduce it into their ranges, the lower the prices will get on fabrication. And I think that we've got the story, we've got the advantage of being small, but we can't do it in isolation. So if I work with a medium-sized CMT, I can't just sit there. I need to work with a small CMT. So I work with a lot of small CMTs, and I need to work with a big CMT, because I can't be everything to everyone. But I do need those big retailers to bring in those sustainable fabrics out of Portugal and to bring that price down. Because right now, I can't get those quantities. I would like to use sustainable fabrics to introduce them to my designers, but it's just too expensive, because we don't have that clout. We don't have that buying power that the bigger retailers got.
I think eventually we will see a sort of slow uptick in bringing back our own textile manufacturing. I had a chat last week. Last week's webinar was with Bridget Labala from Chambray Line Fabric, and she is the owner of a textile house. And one of her biggest gripes was the fact that sourcing local fabrics, local textiles, was proving to be so painful. And her point was that universities and technikons and colleges are not actually concentrating around textile development, textile design as a subject. And I think that if maybe we fix that, then we're able to see the reintroduction, because at one stage we did have really amazing textile manufacturing capability, right, Alex?
100%.
Yeah. So
the big initiatives around it is that the big retailers are driving it on our behalf, where they're working with the government to say, guys, how do we make sure we can develop our own fabric molds to reintroduce the strength of, because our local fabric molds that are left have got such a narrow product offering because of value and price. So they can't give you that wide offering that we're looking for. They try to work on volumes and understand exactly what they're doing. So there's a lot of initiatives to develop the local fabric markets. And there's a lot of work being done on grey imports in terms of from the excise and the excise of the customs divisions. A lot of work's been done, but at the moment it's so far away. So we're going to find our way around the fact that it's going to take time. So work on the story, work on the other aspects, make sure that we support you locally in all aspects, making sure that we don't buy fabrications that are going to land up in landfill that's never ever going to be destroyed or be used. So yes, we got to try, but at this stage it's a combination of you can't just sit on the laurels and say, no, we can't do it because we need to survive. It's got to be part of our story. There's a brand, Amen, none of you heard of it. They launched in 2020 the AFI Fashion, Cape Town Fashion Week. I don't know the brand, but I've been following them because they're not pretending to say they are sustainable. They are saying they're making the sustainable as every part of their journey going forward. And I think that is such a good message for me and for the people I work with. We've got to make it be part of every decision we make. We might not be able to do it in every aspect, but at least we've thought through it and not just discounted the fact that we're not going to be the sustainable, because that's not the future. It's just the reality. If we don't do it, we won't have a future.
Yeah, they're 100% right. You know, as a consultant, this is what I usually tell small brands that I work with. Get off on the right foot. Start your sustainability journey from the time you put your pen to paper. Design in a way that keeps in mind what the end of life of your product is and that sort of thing. So I completely agree with all of your points. All right, so I've taken up enough of your time. We don't seem to have any questions from the audience. So I'm going to leave it here, and I thank each and every one of you for your time, both my guests and the participants on this webinar. I will upload the recording onto my website and let you guys all know when it's up and ready. And you can share it with your networks for anyone who wasn't able to make it, etc. Kasamba, Shingai, and Alex, I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And it's like Kasamba said in the beginning, time is a commodity right now. So I'm grateful for the time that you've given me. And I'm really, really thankful for that. I hope you guys have a great day further.
Thanks.
Okay, cheers everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.